YouTube? Is Isaac Karma here with Jonton.
Hey.
And we are here with our faction review of the Skaven, the Under Empire, the Rat Men.
Yes, yes.
Yes,
Rusty,
yes.
Rusty.
read. Do video. Yes, yes. And I don't know how to do the rat voice. There's like a special way to do it, they say.
I don't think rats call themselves Radkey.
Radicki?
Think of it.
That's probably... Oh,
That's
is that
the dwarf.
dwarfs? Yeah, probably not. Any case, we'll figure out the racial epithets for Skaven later. But here, we're going to talk about the faction review. So again, guys, this is a faction review, part of our weeks and weeks long road of trials, where we're trying every faction for a week, playing them to see how they work, figuring out their strengths, their weaknesses, things we think should be changed, all from a competitive multiplayer focus. And with that, John, why don't you tell us a little bit about the Skavinos?
So, those Skaven, they are, of course, all about rats. There are many rats. They have their monsters, they have some funky machines, and a lot of cool stuff. They're kind of like greenskins in a way that they're kind of fun and crazy, and they do crazy stuff in the lore. And some of that comes through in the game. I wish it would come through a little bit better, but they're definitely a cool faction. I'm liking them a lot. They have a lot of specialized units that excel at one thing, like Death Runners or Night Runners, something like that. One of those kind of units. They have the kiting units versus artillery. They have monsters. They have chaff. They have storm vermin. So a lot of good stuff. They of course have low leadership, but in true Skaven faction, they do come back in large numbers. So
yeah. So
that's a general overview of Skaven.
This is true. So with that, let's get on to the strengths here. So I think why don't you keep us going with the strengths, John? Why don't you carry this one?
No problem, Mike. So our first strength is, of course, Skaven can go wide. Of course, they are the Skaven faction. Their whole thing is all about numbers, so they can bring a lot of infantry, and they can pretty much cover up the whole field. Another good thing about their infantry is that they have all the way from lowest of low tier to well, I wouldn't say it's definitely not highest of high tier, but middle high tier, I guess.
You're paying those high tier prices for the mid tier infantry.
Let's call them low high tier.
Low high tier.
But yeah, that's their infantry. Definitely a strength there in how much they can bring.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that they have a little bit of wider variety of infantry, and of course they can go wide in very Skaven faction. I think another strength though is, and I think probably their biggest strength is their lord choices. Mainly two of them. So you have Skrulk, who is arguably, I would say, one of the best lords in the game. He's definitely up there with Malekith. He's definitely up there with who else? Oh, and Wurzag, and a bunch of other great lords up there. He's definitely in that top tier in that conversation. Why is Skrulk so good? Because he has free Spirit Leeches. He gets two of them, which are actually, John informed me, are better than Spirit Leeches with the Libra Bonicus. So those cost no magic, and you get two of those. And especially against factions that don't have healing, like Chaos and like Greenskins, or in Beastmen as well, you can just do so much damage to their lord right away for free, and it costs you nothing. And then of course Skrulk has really high melee stats, and he does magic damage, and he hurts leadership. You know, he just has a lot of great things to him that make him such an effective lord, and he's so crazy cheap. But we'll talk a lot about that a little bit later. And then the other lord choice that you have is the Douche Furnace, the Plague Furnace, the Doom Furnace, whatever you want to call it. I unaffectionately refer to it as the Douche Furnace because I don't like them. But yeah, they're very good in that you can just roll through infantry with them, with a Douche Furnace, no problem. And it can just, on low tier infantry or mid tier infantry, it just decimates entire armies.
Yeah, it kills infantry super fast.
And then the animation is really wonky, so even trying to get full surrounds is very difficult because it pushes forward, then it pulls back, and a lot of units, even Cav, will get pushed back, and then they'll be they won't get full surrounds. So the animation makes it even harder to kill.
That being said, it is worth the note that it is weak to monsters and artillery.
It is, but it can knock monsters over, like a Doom or a Gorbel, for instance. It could just smoke a Gorbel. Oh yeah,
it can punt a Gorbel. But
yeah, launch him. That's true. I know Gorbel used to be the heavy hitters of the Warhammer world, not anymore. But yeah, it can just punt smaller things, and again the animation makes it harder to kill. But I agree, it can be dealt with. And then so next strength, John, take us away.
So, the Skaven have a pretty good variety of tools. Now, they're not on Empire or Dark Elf levels, but they got some stuff. So, they have monsters, all kinds of monsters. So, Hellpit Abominations, Doom Wheels, really good, and Rat Ogres. They have lots of cheap infantry that can just get in the way of opponents, not to mention summons, which can also help in that endeavor. They have really good artillery. Warp lightning cannons are just crazy accurate. They do have some weaknesses. Their artillery. The same thing goes for their play claw catapults, who can also do a lot of damage, but can be counter sniped pretty easily. We already mentioned the Doom Wells. Like I said, we already mentioned the furnaces and Doom Bell as well. I think it's called, and yeah. So they have a lot of stuff. They can combine them in a lot of interesting ways.
Yeah.
And to add on to that, we of course have to add their ability to kite is definitely one of their tools too. So
for sure,
Shadow Runners, Night Runners, even their slings are really good. So a lot of tools here to come up with some different strategies for this game.
And they're all very specialized. I think they're the only faction that has armor sundering on a regular unit. I want to say that's true. I think so. Yeah.
I think you may be right. All the other ones might. I think are.
It's all Regiment Renown. Yeah. So that's kind of cool. So they have a lot of different tools, like you said, kiting, and they're all very specialized. Like they all do one thing really well. You don't get a lot of. There's no unit on the Skaven that is good against everything, which I like. There's not, except for maybe Skrulk, but besides Skrulk, there's no unit on the Skaven that's like, okay, it can deal with anything other than like a Shaggoth or even Biggins right now. So that's nice. I like that. But here's some things we don't like. Some of the weaknesses. So one of the weaknesses I wanted to point out is, well, they do have good artillery and they have good range. They do have a lack of mid-range, and what I mean by that is, say you're on a map that doesn't favor artillery, or you're facing a faction like Empire or High Elves that can counter snipe your artillery, you're gonna have a difficult time getting into their back line. It is worth mentioning that summons can easily sort of compensate for this, but if you don't want to bring Skrulk or you don't want to bring Plague, and let's face it, you don't want to bring the same thing every match, right? It's kind of boring. If you don't want to bring those things, you're going to have trouble getting into the back line. If you bring the summons, you'll have an easier time of it, but there's a lot of factors that can go boxy. They can bring a lot of chaff. They can hold up your archers, or your summons rather, and then their archers can just whittle away at your big monsters and big machines. A good example is the High Elf box with the Sisters of Avalorn, because their range is like 180 or 190 or whatever it is, very, very long. They can just sort of sit back and snipe out your monsters while their infantry holds, and if you can't get close enough to summon, you're in bad shape.
Yeah, guys. Several times this week, I tried to bring a something else besides Skrulk against the Empire. Did not go well.
No.
anything that's Ooh, it's tough. But as soon as I brought Skrulk, I was doing fine against the Empire. So it's just that's how they deal with it. I'm okay with that being the way with how they deal with it, but you definitely need to look out for that on the battlefield.
Right on. So should we move to the next one?
Yep, and I'll go ahead and go on straight to their lack of mobility is definitely a weakness. So as Skaven, your best fast unit is going to be the Rat Ogres, but the Rat Ogres, when they're unsupported by infantry, aren't that great. So you don't want them taking a charge from something like Reiksguard or Silver Helms or anything like that, although they can probably beat the Silver Helms. The Reiksguard would probably win. But yeah, cavalry in general, especially anything that's in air forces, just like with the Greenskins, are definitely a weakness of the Skaven because of the Skaven's inability to catch them and keep them pinned down long enough for them to kill them.
Yeah, that's definitely a problem. It's yeah, like you said, similar to Greenskins and every other faction that has a lack of mobility. It's always that hard-hitting cav just is scary to deal with.
Yep. So let's get into that next one.
Yeah, and then with that, we're going to talk about the infantry, which is we had a bit of a disagreement, John and I, on this. So infantry for me, I felt was a little too weak in that. So fear and terror obviously is a big obviously one of the big weaknesses of the Skaven, as it should be. They're rats. They're known for being cowards. They're not known for being high elves or like stalwart warriors. So that's fine. I'm not saying changing these things. But they have really, really bad stats, which again is in keeping with the flavor of the lore. These are little rat monsters. They're not supposed to be, capable warriors. But the problem is that the way CA implemented them is they gave them a little bit of a health boost to compensate for their bad stats. I just don't think it quite works out that way. I mean, I was doing some stat comparisons a little bit earlier, and if you look at Tomb Guard with halberds versus the Stormvermin with halberds, the stats are just way inferior on the halberd on the Stormvermin. Meanwhile, you're paying 250 more. You're paying a third more for worse stats across the board, with a few differences here and there. But ultimately, it's pretty bad. And then if you compare their Skaven or clan rats with spears to just Empire spearmen. Again, it's the same sort of discussion. You're getting a little bit more health and a few more models, but for just weaker stats across the board, which again compounds onto the fact that cav is scary because those cav charges on more models tend to do more damage because they get a wider charge. So I think their infantry is not in the best place personally, but we had a bit of a discussion of that.
Well, I kind of agree with Karma a little bit. I don't think it's too particularly bad. I would not mind. I mean, I wouldn't mind a little bit of a buff, but we'll go over that a little bit later. I'm not totally opposed to it. I just don't think it's 100% necessary. But I would say Skavens feel a little bit weak, and I guess it's probably their infantry. So I can.
And you said you're monster aligned. The build you told me that didn't lose. You said your best build has no infantry other than slaves.
And that's what I was about to mention.
Yeah.
Never was I relying on Skaven's infantry. It was always coming down to either monsters or artillery. So I can see a little bit of a... I'd be okay with a little bit of a buff across the board for the infantry, but we'll go into that later, like I said.
Sure.
But let's go ahead and move on to another one of their weaknesses, and that is Lord Sniping. Now, the Skaven, of course, don't have healing, so something that any Skaven player is going to have to watch out for is things like Final Transmutations, Spirit Leeches, having, like Sakarma mentioned to me earlier, 3 eagles dive on Scroll can just take him out. So it's definitely some counterplay, but the main thing you definitely got to watch out for, especially the magic abilities that can hit you from range.
Yeah, fireballs and stuff like that. That's a very popular thing to do.
Fireballs, Spirit Leech, that kind of stuff. I saw lots of fireballs.
I didn't see any, but I could see that being terrible. Yeah.
And a lot of the times, like, say you're going up against Empire, and they have cannons that can take out your cannons, and then they have the range to stay out of range of your gutter runners to use your fireball. It can be pretty tough.
There's definitely trouble there. So with that out of the way, so those are some of the weaknesses, but let's talk a little bit about the balancing. So we're gonna, continue on what I was saying earlier. So here's the thing. I think infantry on this Skaven need more health. So that right now they're about 7,000 each, which is pretty high for infantry units. I'd like to see that health go up to maybe 8,000, 8,500, maybe even 9,000. The idea being is that you're gonna have these really weak giant blobs of infantry, and they'll fight against other infantry. They'll die by the dozens, but because they have so much health, they'll help their leadership be a little bit higher, and they'll stay in the fight a little bit longer, and they'll just be better at doing what they should be doing, which is just running in there and dying, or at least holding for a little bit. So that's my personal thing. Yeah.
On that note, I can see some I don't know about 2,000 health, but maybe some health buffs across the board for Skaven. Like I said, I didn't have as much of a problem with the infantry, but I do think they're a little bit weak. I think they should definitely not get stats upgrades and should just get more health to keep that Skaven feeling to them.
I don't want to stat upgrades, but
I can definitely see that.
But I don't know how you could say that you can't see that when you said your best build was 6 Skaven slaves and you run no infantry.
Well, that's
that kind of proves my point. No, if your best build has only Skaven slaves in it and literally no infantry, doesn't that mean that the infantry is kind of weak?
I'm not. It is kind of weak.
Well, yeah, I would just say that
I can definitely see some health buffs. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. Again, you could disagree. I'm just saying that you said your best build was one that literally brought no Skaven infantry besides slaves.
Yeah, the
so
infantry.
I would say then that proves that, to me at least, that I think that infantry, because for me, Skaven should be infantry focused in that they should have just 160. Oh, so I want to mention they should have more units in their model. Would be fun. Or sorry, models in their unit rather. So they have like 160 out of 120. But yeah, just to have tons of rats on the field with a few monsters sprinkled in to help out, of course. And
the only reason... Go ahead, sorry.
That's it. Yeah, that's it.
The only reason I give any pushback at all is because I feel like giving them that many models to so many units on the field and that much health, you can bring a lot of units. It can make a pretty big difference. But I'm confident that CA, if they decide that the Skaven infantry need a little bit of a buff, will make some sensible.
Sure.
I mean, if it turns out that 1,000 is too much or too little, then they can up it to 2,000 or 500 per unit, of course.
Exactly. I'm just spitballing, but I think that would be the solution.
As long as it makes sense. I don't want Skaven to be too tanky in the front line.
No, of course. Well, it's not. Yeah, it's not about being tanky. It's like cav charger will still wreck them. It's just more a matter of when they're fighting other units of comparable costs and comparable roles, they won't just crumble. And then at that point, you're just, okay, rat ogres, abominations, doom wheels. Like, that's, I don't know. For me, that shouldn't be the whole army. They should be a swarm faction, and they're not a swarm faction right now.
Definitely something for CA to look at. Moving on, though, we're going to talk about our beloved Skrulk.
Mm-hmm.
The guy that costs 2,000, who costs less than 2,000.
Less than 2,000.
And has basically 5 Spirit Leeches, an AoE damage, AoE debuffs, magic damage, leadership debuffs, really good melee stats for a Castle Lord, with good magic including summons,
Right.
and like I said, he's under 2,000. So Skrulk is insanely cost effective. He's just way better than any of the other lords. The only one that you might consider besides that is maybe Queek against the dwarves, and then the Plague Furnace sometimes. Depending on how strong the enemy artillery is. But goddamn, Skrulk.
He is way too good.
He's so good.
And it's funny playing as him, and then you compare him to like someone like Cetra, who is just so expensive. Like we're going through Tomb King's week right now, and Cetra is so crazy expensive, and you get so much less out of Cetra than you would get from Skrulk. It's insane.
Yeah, Skrulk, you get so much for so little. He needs to... Liber Bubonicus, first of all, does not need to do like 2.5 to 3 Spirit Leech damage.
Silly.
That's stupid. Second of all, he needs to... I don't know. It just needs to be... Do you think it needs to be easier to kill? Because
yes,
I've always found him to be fairly tanky. Being on the ground, he gets knocked over a lot.
And he has that -5 melee debuff around him, right? So he does that -5 melee debuff, and he does the leadership damage, and he does poison too, doesn't he? I don't think he does poison, but you can get poison in there.
No, he doesn't have poison, but 45 melee defense is pretty good.
Yeah. I think he's just I would like to see that drop to maybe 40. You know, just a little bit of a slight debuff there. And, maybe one cast of Liber Bonicus. Maybe one. Or at least...
Yeah, you know, I never noticed. He actually does have Frenzy as well, and Fear.
I didn't know that either.
So, even better.
Yeah, so he is crazy good.
Not to mention Stand Your Ground. Ugh, man.
Stand Your Ground's huge, too, because it makes him even harder to kill. So, yeah, I definitely think he needs a debuff, or at least a cost increase. You know, either one of those will help. Either stats go down or cost goes up. And then you'll have a better place with him. And then, and I think that, you know, compounding on that is the Queek buff. So Skrulk debuff and a Queek buff. So Queek, as John was saying a little earlier, he's just kind of like an armored assassin. He doesn't do anything special except for the Dwarf Gouger, I think it's called, which is like pretty expensive for a little bit more, you know, for a weapon increase. It's also not interesting. It's boring. It's just a stat thing. So, you know, we're not big fans of those. And then, of course, he does that -18 armor around him, which is kind of cool. But again, it's not something that's like visually stimulating or makes him interesting to play. So
Queek needs something else. Why would you bring him over Skrulk? He can do the same damage that Liber Bubonicus, plus do a bunch of magic and all that other stuff.
Skrulk's just way better, and they're the same price. They're roughly the same price. So Queek, definitely needs something cool. And with that, those are balance changes. Let's go on to our little wishes. My favorite part, little wishes. So I like little wishes. So I want rattling gunners. So those are just, you know, they have little, what are those things called? Miniguns that obviously shoot little laser beams because they're Skaven. And I think that if they're well implemented, they'll solve the mid-range problem I mentioned earlier. So they'll have like an actual ranged unit that can have maybe 150 range and do a lot of damage. Hopefully have an anti-infantry bonus will be very cool. I don't know how that would implement that in ranged units, but still, I think it'd be fun. And it would make them pretty funky and something new to add. So that's what I'm looking forward to.
But CA, I want to say, when you're looking at those guys, y'all have made every unit like that pretty useless so far. Except, so like Flamethrower is pretty useless.
Yeah.
I gotta say the Dwarven ones have gotten pretty good as of late. What are those guys called?
Skolder Guard or whatever? That's the Regiment Renown. But
not the Skolder Guard, but the regular ones.
Just the regular Flamethrowers?
No, not the flamethrowers.
That's what I mean. Yeah, that's what. Okay, I'm talking about the Trollhammer torpedoes. Yeah, those guys. Those guys are good now. Yeah.
Yeah, they need to be more like that, except for against infantry.
I want. I think that'd be cool.
Anyway, moving on from rattling gunners, there's another unit that I'd like. I don't know if it's lore appropriate or whatever, but I just remember playing Vermintide 2 and seeing Storm Fiends. So we have rat ogres with flamethrowers on their hands, and what I was thinking is not making them a range unit, but making them an actual melee unit with, like, maybe fire and poison damage, because you know it's Warp Stone Fire. And giving them animations reminiscent of the Doomfire Warlocks. You know how they shoot out that pink fire? Have rat ogres that have trapsons on them that shoot out the green fire, but still make them a melee unit, but one more focused, like, basically rat ogres base made to take out unarmored infantry.
Yeah, so like maybe like an elite version of the Rat Ogres would be cool.
I think it would look really cool.
Yeah, give them some armor, make them a little more expensive. I think it'd be fun. Or it could be
Hell,
even.
they could even be a regiment of
I was
renown.
about to say that regiment around. Yeah, so there's a
If
lot.
they didn't
Yeah,
want
a
to
lot
make
of
them
tools
their
there.
own unit.
That'll be fun when they get the regiments of renown.
Yeah,
I think that'll really help them.
Anyway, those are all right.
Yeah. Little wishes.
Now let's move on to the matchups and
yes.
tell you what we think about these. So I'll start off with Wood Elves.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say that's pretty bad for the Skaven. They can get kited. The units like Doomfire Warlocks and what are they called? Wild Riders.
Yeah, Wild Riders. Yeah.
Are like they are for the Greenskins. The Skaven are very similar to the Greenskins. They have a real problem with those kinds of units.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Pretty much any faction that doesn't have mobility has trouble with those units.
Indeed.
Moving on, so we'll do Empire. So it's a pretty even matchup.
Yeah, I'd say it's slightly advantages Empire right now.
I agree. Empire has a little bit of the better build in there. Again, as John was saying, if you don't bring Skrulk, you're gonna have a really tough time breaking that Empire box. If you do bring Skrulk, it's a little bit more of an even matchup. I would even say with Skrulk and some other builds you can do good damage to Empire, but it's tough. But yeah, anyways,
yeah, for sure.
Moving on.
We are now going to go over the Beastmen, and me and Zakram agreed that we didn't play this one too much, but this one's probably even.
Yeah.
The Beastmen definitely have some tools. Chaos Spawn can work. They can even bring their Ragnarok Queen, which can be okay.
Mm-hmm. The Ragnarok Queen from the Beastmen.
Oh, sorry about that. No, not the Ragnarok Queen, but a bunch of Synagors and a bunch of range. Goreherd should do fairly well against Skaven Infantry. The Skaven do have their monsters though, which could be a huge problem for the Beastmen. But we think in general Beastmen can deal with it.
Yeah, and Lord
Sniping. If I was to
Sniping.
give a slight advantage, I would say Skaven because of those monsters, but. The Skaven themselves are weak to fear and terror too, so the Beastmen have some counters.
It's give and take. And then of course you have Liber Bonicus, which just means whatever lord you bring, unless you bring Morgar. But if you don't bring Morgar as the Beastmen, you're probably going to lose your lord pretty quickly. So that's trouble.
Yeah. Morgar is just a no-brainer in that one.
Yeah,
the Chaos Spawn.
the Chaos Spawn and prevent the Liber Bonicus snipe. Anyways, moving on to Vampires. Very bad. Very, very bad for Skaven. Fear and terror, cav, mobility, all the things that they can't deal with. The Vampires bring them in spades, so very bad for Skaven.
Yep. And moving on to the High Elves, we'd say this one's probably even.
Yeah. I'm tempted to give the benefit to High Elves, but yeah, it's close. It's not.
Yeah, we both thought about this one. On paper, we think the High Elves would be better, but in actual gameplay, and of course, another disclaimer here, we're just fighting regular people on ladders, so
little fucking normals. Fucking dirty casuals.
But we're just fighting the average player on ladders, so you get people who are really good, you get people who are really bad, and maybe we just got people who weren't that familiar with the game, but I didn't have trouble with High Elves too much.
Me neither.
On paper, right now we're going to say even, because we need more information on this one, basically.
Well, just a quick note. This is the very, very beginning of Creating the Crone DLC. I played Dov, who's a very capable player, as High Elves against Skaven a couple of times, and I beat him pretty handily. So that is also sort of coloring my perception of it. Yeah. So I still think they have the advantage, but again, like you said, we don't have enough information.
Yeah, so with that, we're going to put them as even, but be aware, High Elves may have the advantage here.
Yeah.
We don't have quite enough information for that one.
So moving on to the other elves, the Darker Cousins. Dark Elves, it's a bad matchup. Dark Elves are top tier.
Yeah.
They have a lot of tools to deal with everything. Sisters of Singing Doom, or Sisters of Slaughter rather, are really good in this matchup. And,
Witch Elves.
Yeah, Witch Elves and
Warlocks.
Yeah.
Everything that can absolutely destroy this faction. And moving on to Bratonia. Didn't play this one too much either. I'm gonna say it's even to start out with though. With the Wart Lightning Cannon, they can deal with Cav. The Cav can definitely be a lot of trouble, but if you bring a lot of spears and a lot of Rat Ogres, maybe like one Doomwheel with Skrulk, it can be done.
It can be done. It takes some finagling, but I don't know. I'm tempted to give the advantage to Bratonia, but I think it can be done. Yeah.
If I was to give a slight advantage to someone, it'd be Bratonia, but not enough to. When we say slight advantage, that means we believe it's not enough to tip it into like a bad matchup.
Yeah.
I'd still say it's pretty.
Yeah, the Fae's pretty good in that matchup, but yeah. Anyways, moving on, we're gonna talk about the Dwarves. So even I had a difficult time with them. John had a less difficult time with them. I did bring some like funky builds, like Plague Monk Sensor Bearers, who are garbage. Yeah, so they were garbage, but yeah, I brought some funky builds against them, but I don't know. I had some trouble, but I did beat them a few times, so I guess even's fair enough where to put them. They both have their advantages on each other.
Hmm. And of course, Chaos. Who's that not a bad matchup for?
Nobody. With Dark Elves,
Dark
maybe. Dark Elves and Chaos are definitely the top tier for sure. They stand alone.
Yeah. So they have Shaggus. They have the mobility. They have the tankiness. They
Final
have fear and
Transmutation.
terror. Final Transmutation too.
Very good spell against
Chothril.
Skaven.
Chaos just have everything. Like the Dark Elves, Chaos have everything they need to
They
beat
do.
basically.
Lizardmen, we'd say even. I didn't play this matchup too much. I think I maybe even played it 0 times, so I really can't comment on it. I don't know if did you play it, John, at all?
I only played it 1 or twice, and when we're not sure about a faction, we put them in even, guys.
Yeah.
Feel free to chime in. We notice when you play Skaven, a lot more. Some factions don't tend to pop up too much. I never got to fight Chaos. I don't think even once.
I played them a couple times.
Once or twice. So I don't know. People didn't bring them that much against Skaven. They mostly brought factions like Empire and Vampires and High Elves and Dark Elves.
Yeah, I got a lot of dwarfs. Yeah,
yeah. I feel like they wouldn't do that great if their cannons can't take down the dinos, but I also played a few games against them and I did well. But like we said, random people on ladder, they could have been good, they could have been bad.
Hard to say. And then we'll go on to the Norske. So we said this was even. I think I played once or twice. I think I won one, lost one. I think the Norske have the advantage with those hounds. Are quite good against Skaven. But then Skaven have a lot of different tools they have to bring against Norske, like artillery, like Liber Bonicus, and they can do that draining effect. Yeah, so I think it's a pretty even matchup.
Yeah, I'd have to say it's even right now as well. All right, moving on to greenskins. We'd say that the Skaven actually have an advantage here just because of their single entity killing power, which of course is good at killing greenskin lords, and their monsters. So the Doom Whale, the Hellpit Abomination, can just run through infantry, pair them up with some rat ogres, and just kind of make a blob that goes around killing everything. The greenskins have a real hard time dealing with that, especially when you can summon rats and stuff, get on all their archers and stop them from taking down your Hellpits. I did not have a problem with greenskins at all with this game.
Yeah, I think I played greenskins once. I don't remember the outcome, but yeah, that build does sound scary as a greenskin player. So I feel ya. Moving on to Tomb Kings. I think I played Tomb Kings once and I won. We're going to say it's even. Again, it's a little inconclusive. Very few people bring Tomb Kings on ladder. It's probably the faction I play the least is Tomb Kings and Skaven. So it's, very interesting. No, you don't see a lot of those guys on ladder much. So would you say it was even because we didn't really get too conclusive of a information?
On paper, I would say
Tomb Kings.
It'd probably favor the Tomb Kings.
On paper, but you never know. Yeah, but on paper, like the Sphinx of Upsep, it looks so good against everything, and meanwhile, I keep bringing it and it keeps sucking for me.
I know.
So I don't know. It's hard to say with Tomb Kings with the paper. Paper is it's papyrus for the Tomb Kings. They don't know what the fuck they're doing. That's why they don't even use paper.
All right. So that's the matchup, guys. Let's go ahead and move on to our overall conclusion of the Skaven here. So, we both agree that they're tier 2, maybe mid to lower tier 2.
Yeah.
They didn't seem absolutely fantastic. Lost a lot of games to them. They're very weak to fear and terror, and cav, and even kiting. The lack of mobility is just a huge thing for our factions. But the greenskins can overcome it with their infantry. The Skaven have to try to overcome it with their monsters, their numbers, and their artillery, which is not quite as effective as the greenskins. So, overall, I'd say they're a pretty fun faction. They have a fairly unique playstyle, kind of like the dwarves, except they're a little bit more mobile. You can definitely rush with them, and they have monsters and not as good artillery. Well, artillery that can be sniped out easily, rather. So. But overall, I really liked them.
Well, see, I did not. I did not really enjoy them that much. I think they were my least favorite faction to play so far, with the greenskins being my favorite because they're my boys, the boys. But see, I didn't find them that fun, and I think the reason I had less fun with them is because I felt they weren't quite living up to the way they play on tabletop, which is a nitpicky thing to say. I'm not even a big tabletop guy, but I wanted them to have more of a swarm feel. I wanted there to be rats everywhere, coming out of the ground, just, fighting all over the place, just dying by the hundreds and hundreds. And I find that if you want to bring competitive Skaven builds, that's not the way to go. If you want to bring competitive, you bring a lot of the machines. You bring the Helpet Abomination, which is, well, I'll talk about that at the end. But you bring the Helpet Abomination, and you bring some other those units, and they're sort of doing the heavy lifting. And I found that was sort of, I don't know, it bummed me out a little bit. I wanted to see more rats in the field doing more rat-like things instead of just, monsters running around. But I will give CA credit for this. So I'll say, CA, you get a wag of the finger, because I think that they're not quite as flavorful as they should be. And they could be improved by some of the balancing suggestions I mentioned earlier. But what they did do well is the Helpet Abomination, which I think is the perfect monster in this game. It does everything it says it's going to do without being OP. I love the Helpet Abomination. I think it's such a well-balanced unit. I think it's really a testament to the balancing team, the Helpet Abomination, because it kills big targets. It's not amazing against infantry, but it does okay against infantry. It's not crazy fast. It's not a one-man army killer, but it has the heal, so it's very survivable. It's just a very, very good unit that I think is well implemented. So those are my two conclusions. I love the Helpet Abomination, but overall, I think the faction's a little bit not flavorful and too monster reliant, which makes it, for me at least personally, not fun to play.
And that goes to show, guys, two people who play games together a lot having different opinions on a faction overall. So that's just a testament to how perceptions of something can change your opinion on it. So,
but we will soon be one.
Cool stuff.
John, yes, you and I will soon be one. We will meld into a single person and only share opinions.
Yes, we will meld into a single being,
an entity. Power. Yeah, then we'll be unstoppable, unlimited power. All right. And with that, guys, that'll wrap it up for our faction focus of Skaven. Any final parting words, John?
Yes. End. End
finish video now. All right, guys. We'll see you around the bend.
See you guys.